Imagine a young king who, before his 33rd birthday, carved an empire from Greece to the edges of India. A battlefield genius, a charismatic leader, and a symbol of ambition, but also a man whose victories were soaked in blood, whose temper and paranoia sparked executions, and whose choices left ruined cities and enslaved peoples in their wake. This is Alexander of Macedon. Stay until the end. The final twist will force you to reconsider everything you thought you knew about greatness. Early life and rise. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the son of King Philip II of Macedon and Queen Olympias. He was schooled by Aristotle, steeped in Homeric ideals, and trained for war from childhood. When Philip was assassinated in 336 BC, the 20-year-old Alexander became king. He moved fast to secure his rule. He crushed rebellions in Greece and reasserted Macedonian dominance. From the start, he combined charisma with ruthless efficiency, presenting himself as the only way forward for a fragile coalition of states. Conquests and lasting achievements. Between 334 and 323 BC, Alexander led a lightning campaign against the Persian Empire. Victories at the Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela dismantled Persian power. He pursued Darius III across Asia, took key cities, and claimed titles that marked him as more than a mere general. Alexander founded dozens of cities named Alexandria that became hubs of Greek language, administration, and culture. He pushed Hellenic institutions eastward and encouraged intermarriage and mixed units in his army. The result was the Hellenistic world, a crossroad of Greek and Eastern ideas in art, science, and governance that shaped the Mediterranean and Near East for centuries. Dark stories and controversies. But alongside these achievements are episodes of brutality and paranoia that complicate the legend. Ancient chroniclers record actions that look less like enlightened empire building and more like punitive state terror. The destruction of Thebes in 335 BC. Thebes rebelled against Macedonian rule. Alexander responded with total destruction. The city was sacked, thousands were killed, and survivors were sold into slavery. The razing served as a calculated warning to other Greek states. The siege of Tyre in 332 BC and massacres at Gaza and elsewhere. Tyre resisted for months and, when finally taken, suffered heavy casualties. Gaza and several other fortified cities faced similar fates. These sieges were not mere military defeats. They often ended with mass slaughter and enslavement of civilians. Political purges and executions of rivals. Philotas, accused of conspiracy, was executed after a trial in 330 BC. To ensure there was no revenge or lingering threat, Alexander had Philotas's father, Parmenion, a long-serving and respected commander, killed on suspicious grounds. These killings were preventive and brutal, signaling an intolerance for any perceived threat to Alexander's authority. The killing of Cletus in 328 BC. In a boozy argument, Alexander stabbed and killed Cletus the Black, an officer who had once saved his life. The episode revealed a volatile temper and the dangerous mix of intoxication, pride, and absolute power. The burning of Persepolis in 330 BC. The ceremonial capital of the Persian kings was set ablaze. Ancient sources offer different motives: revenge for Persian invasions of Greece, drunken extravagance, or a symbolic end to the empire. But the outcome was cultural destruction on a grand scale. Reprisals in Afghanistan, Bactria, and the eastern provinces. Campaigns in mountain regions were marked by harsh reprisals, forced resettlement, and collective punishments. Resistance in these areas often triggered disproportionate retaliation against towns and communities. Cultural experiments that divided his men. ChatGPT plus Midjourney GPT-5. Alexander pushed for cultural fusion from the top. He adopted some Persian dress and rituals, encouraged mass marriages between Macedonian officers and Persian noblewomen at Susa, and promoted a policy of mixed administration. But some of his demands crossed a line for Macedonians, notably the introduction of proskynesis, a Persian-style ritual of physical submission that many saw as demeaning and monarchic. The policy alienated key figures in his army and fueled resentment at court. What he called synthesis others saw as cultural coercion. Signs of personal and political decay. As the campaigns wore on, ancient accounts described changes in Alexander's behavior: heavier drinking, bouts of rage, grandiose claims of divine favor, and increased suspicion of friends and subordinates. He executed or exiled those he thought disloyal. Whether this was genuine mental decline, the corrosive effect of endless war, or the intoxicating power of unchallenged rule, it produced tragic outcomes among his closest companions. Death and the aftermath. Alexander died suddenly in Babylon in 323 BC at the age of 32. Theories about the cause range from febrile illness like malaria or typhoid to poisoning, though modern historians find natural causes more likely. What followed his death was chaos. There was no clear heir, and his generals, the Diadochi, fought a brutal, decades-long series of wars that carved the empire into competing Hellenistic kingdoms. Many of the same patterns of executions, betrayals, and cultural impositions continued under his successors. Final twist and denouement. Here is the twist that changes the way you should view Alexander. His most enduring violence was not only the cities he burned or the men he had killed. It was the model of personal, charismatic rule he normalized. By wrapping military genius in claims of divine favor, demanding rituals of submission, and engineering cultural fusion from above, Alexander demonstrated an effective template, a single dominant leader who used culture and spectacle to legitimize autocratic control. That template survived him. The Hellenistic monarchies that rose from his empire kept the facade of cultural patronage while practicing the same ruthless consolidation of power, and future rulers, in East and West, could point to Alexander's myth as justification for domineering authority. In other words, Alexander's legacy is a paradox. He spread ideas and institutions that enriched entire regions, yet he also legitimized a form of power that made massive coercion and personal tyranny look like statesmanship. So ask yourself this when you imagine Alexander the Great. Are you looking at the brilliant founder of Hellenistic civilization, or at a ruthless autocrat whose methods became a global template for domination? The truth is both. And understanding that contradiction is the only way to reckon honestly with his story. If you watch to the end, decide for yourself which Alexander matters more, the conqueror on the coin, or the man whose decisions reshaped millions of lives in ways we still feel today. Thank you for watching. If you want more stories like this, give it a like. Good luck.